The headlines after lingering in the Gulf of Mexico, Hurricane Opal begins its move towards the Gulf Coast.
We'll have the latest on its position and where it's headed. A special edition of WeatherScope Tonight is coming up as we chart the course of Hurricane Opal next on the Weather Channel.
Hurricane Opal takes aim on the Gulf Coast, packing 100-mile-an-hour winds. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Mike Seidel here in the Weather Channel Forecast Center in Atlanta. And we want to get you updated on Hurricane Opal. We have the latest in from the National Hurricane Center as of 8 Eastern Time. And it is a Category 2 storm, and it's moving northeast at 13. Now, we've been indicating over the past couple of days that it was going to pick up steam and start accelerating to the northeast, and that is what we're seeing a little bit of this evening. The pressure is down to 957 millibars. That's continuing to drop, a sign that Opal is still strengthening. It's 325 miles south of the mouth of the Mississippi River, and if you're plotting at home, 24.5 north and 90.1 west. It's moving northeast. Here's our latest infrared picture, and again, you can get an idea of where the higher cloud tops are. The brighter colors, the reds and oranges, that's where you have the deepest convection, and it's right in here. And if you look over the past few hours, you can see maybe some darkness appearing, and another sign that the storm, the hurricane, is intensifying. And in its path here, water temperatures are between 84 and 86 degrees. Between that and the very light steering winds aloft, we are fairly certain that this will continue strengthening. It could actually become a Category 3 hurricane before it makes landfall. Anywhere from southeastern Mississippi over towards the Florida Panhandle seems to be the best bet at this point. Hurricane watches are up for those areas. Morgan City through the mouth of the Mississippi. That includes those of you in Mobile, Pensacola, Panama City, Appalachia Bay, and as far east now as the Suwannee River. Also, tropical storm warnings are up for the same areas. And later on tonight, when we get the next advisory in just before 11 o'clock Eastern Time, 10 Central, we may get those hurricane watches upgraded to hurricane warnings, and we'll get that information to you as quickly as possible. Now, outside the watch area, where obviously you're going to have some problems with coastal flooding and beach erosion, coastal flood watches and warnings continue for the Gulf Coast of Texas. That's all because of continued easterly winds, and those easterly winds have been piling the water up along the coast, and we've had tides running 4 to 5 feet above normal. Some islands cut off, like Boca Chica and Brazos Island. Grand Isle, Louisiana here has already been evacuated. That's one of the barrier islands not far from the mouth of the Mississippi. And we've really got to watch the situation overnight, tonight and tomorrow, and then into Wednesday night as the hurricane gets closer. Opal's generating those large swells because of its wind. Just imagine a storm with 100-mile-an-hour winds churning up the water, and those waves, like when you throw a rock in the middle of a lake and those waves propagate back towards you and away from you. Well, that's what's going on. These waves are being created by Opal, and they're moving towards the Gulf Coast. Now, the early problems so far around the periphery have been in Texas, but as Opal draws closer to the Gulf Coast of Florida, Mississippi, and Alabama, and Louisiana, we're going to see your problems increase there, too. Also, remember, the continental shelf is very shallow there, so if we get a hit from the south with a hurricane, that could be very devastating along the Florida Panhandle. Rough seas, beach erosion, tidal flooding, and riptides, you know the drill. And here are your high tides for tomorrow morning. Notice in Mobile and New Orleans, tomorrow late morning in New Orleans, and again tomorrow morning in Pensacola at 7:51. Add about 12 and a half hours on to these numbers to get your high tide tomorrow night in Pensacola, about 9 Central Time in Pensacola, and that could be the worst as we expect landfall late tomorrow night or early Thursday morning. So stay with us here at the Weather Channel.